There is a specific feeling that has no clean name in English. It arrives when something looks almost human, not human enough to accept, not artificial enough to dismiss. A wax figure at a certain angle, a CGI face in a film that cost $200 million to make, a doll in a dark room, a person in a photograph whose eyes are slightly wrong in a way you cannot articulate. And the response is almost universal, measured across cultures, across age groups, in populations that have never encountered the concept. In 1970, Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori published a 4-page essay in an obscure journal called Energy. It contained a single graph. Mori proposed that, as a robot becomes more human-like, our response becomes more positive up to a specific point. Then it inverts sharply and drops into revulsion. If the robot becomes indistinguishable from a human, the response climbs back out. He called the dip Bukimi no Tani, the Valley of Eeriness. The English translation that stuck was Uncanny Valley. The essay was ignored for 30 years. Then computer graphics got good enough to fall into the valley, the film industry started losing money in it, and the concept became one of the most cited ideas in human-computer interaction research. Start with what the valley actually is. The standard explanation you have probably heard is that we are disturbed by things that look almost human because they resemble corpses. That the response evolved to help us avoid disease, contamination, and dead bodies. This explanation is intuitive, widely repeated, and probably wrong. The pathogen avoidance hypothesis has genuine support. Corpses and diseased individuals do show subtle deviations from healthy human appearance, and a system tuned to detect them would be adaptive. The problem is that the uncanny valley response triggers on things showing none of the actual markers of disease or death. A clean, well-lit, animated character with correct skin tone and no signs of decay can produce the response intensely. Whatever the system is detecting, it is not decay. There is a second explanation that circulates widely and is harder to dismiss. The hypothesis is that something once existed that looked almost human and was dangerous, something that shared our form closely enough to approach without triggering an alarm, and that we needed to detect at distance. Under this model, the uncanny valley is not a glitch. It is a threat detection system with a specific target, still running long after the target disappeared. The candidates are usually other hominin species. For most of the last 300,000 years, Homo sapiens was not the only human on Earth. We overlapped with Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, and populations not yet identified. Genetic evidence confirms we interbred with at least 2. Whether we also competed violently is unsettled, but competition between closely related species over the same resources is the norm in biology. A system that could rapidly distinguish us from almost us would have been valuable. The problem is that it makes a prediction the evidence does not support. If the valley evolved to detect rival hominins, it should be uniquely human. It is not. Macaques tested with rendered macaque faces show the same curve looking away from almost real faces. Macaques never coexisted with a rival species that looked almost right. Whatever the response is, it predates hominin overlap entirely. That does not make the theory worthless. It may describe a period when an existing system came under unusually strong selective pressure, a general-purpose mismatch detector getting sharper because failing to notice a mismatch became lethal. The alarm was not built for that threat. But that threat may be part of why it is as sensitive as it is. The stronger evidence points somewhere less obvious. In 2011, researchers at the University of California, San Diego ran a study using fMRI while subjects viewed 3 categories of stimuli: a human, a mechanical-looking robot, and an android designed to look human but not quite succeeding. The mechanical robot and the human both produced clean, coherent neural responses. The android produced something different. Activity spiked in the parietal cortex, specifically in regions that connect the visual processing of body movement with the motor cortex areas containing mirror neurons. The interpretation the researchers offered is that the brain was not disgusted, it was confused. It was attempting to run a prediction: this looks human, therefore it will move like a human, and the prediction was failing in real time. The parietal activity was the signature of a system encountering a mismatch it could not resolve. This is the prediction error model, and it has become the dominant explanation in the field. Your brain does not passively receive visual information. It runs continuous predictive models about what it expects to see, and compares incoming data against them. When the prediction holds, processing is smooth. When it fails, the system flags it and reallocates attention. Most failures resolve instantly. The uncanny valley is what happens when the failure cannot resolve because the stimulus is simultaneously activating and violating the same model. A cartoon character does not activate the human face model. There is no prediction to violate. A real human activates the model and satisfies it. An almost human face activates the model fully, and then fails to satisfy it in dozens of small ways simultaneously. Eye movement timing, blink rate, the specific way skin deforms around the mouth. Micro-expressions that appear and disappear in under a fifth of a second. The brain is running a model with hundreds of parameters and receiving data that matches most of them, and violates several with no way to reconcile the two. The feeling is not discussed. It is the subjective experience of a predictive system in unresolvable conflict. There is a detail in the research that makes this stranger. The uncanny valley response is significantly stronger when the almost human face is moving than when it is still. Mori predicted this in the original essay. He noted that adding movement amplifies the effect and deepens the valley. A still image of an uncanny face is unsettling. The same face in motion is substantially worse. Movement is where prediction is most active. A static face requires only a structural model. A moving face requires the brain to predict the next frame continuously, based on an internal model of how human faces move. That model is extraordinarily precise. Humans detect deviations in facial motion timing on the order of milliseconds. When prediction breaks at that resolution, the failure is constant rather than momentary. The eyes are the specific failure point. Study after study identifies the eye region as the primary driver. Researchers at Dartmouth found that manipulating eye realism alone was sufficient to push a face into and out of the valley, while every other feature stayed constant. In animation and effects work, the eyes are understood to be the hardest element to solve, not because they are structurally complex, but because human sensitivity to eye behavior is so extreme that almost nothing survives it. This response appears well before humans encounter robots or CGI. Infants show measurable distress to faces with disrupted feature configurations by approximately 6 months of age, long before the child has any concept of what a robot is. What Mori was describing in 1970, without the neuroscience to explain it, was a structural feature of primate perception. He arrived at it by thinking about prosthetic hands. He noticed that a prosthetic hand, realistic enough to be mistaken for real, produced a specific reaction in people who then discovered what it was, and that the reaction was worse than if the hand had looked obviously artificial from the start. The final piece of Mori's essay rarely gets discussed. He argued that designers should deliberately aim for the first peak of the curve, maximum positive response before the valley, rather than attempting to cross it. His view was that the fully realistic human replica was not worth pursuing, that the pursuit of perfect human likeness was a design error rather than a technical challenge. The industry did not take this advice. 50 years of animation, robotics, and synthetic media have been spent attempting to cross the valley rather than avoid it. And in the last several years, the crossing has begun to happen. Generated faces now routinely pass as real in controlled testing. The valley is being closed not by better modeling of human appearance, but by systems that learned facial motion statistically from enormous quantities of real human video, without anyone specifying what the rules were. Which means the prediction failure that produced the uncanny feeling is being resolved, not by understanding what the brain was detecting, but by removing whatever it was detecting from the output. The uncanny valley was, for 50 years, a reliable signal. It told you when something was pretending to be human and failing. The feeling in the chest was information, an alarm from a system that had detected a mismatch it could not name. That alarm is now being switched off, not by us, by the systems that learned to stop triggering it. And what that means for the next 50 years of looking at faces on screens is not a question anyone has satisfactorily answered.